Once upon a time, there was a cannon. It was rumored that it had been brought to Ticonderoga by General Knox and used at the siege of Boston in 1776. It is known for certain that in 1808 it was brought with 3 others to Castine and placed in a small battery or fort at the entrance of the harbor. In 1814, while the British were occupying Castine, the commander of the fort fired one volley from his 4 guns, spiked them, and abandoned them. The cannon story ended there for a time, but in 1857 it became the subject of a new story, beginning with a prank. To quote from Williamson's History of Belfast, Volume 2, a few days prior to the 4th of July, 1857, some young men in Belfast conceived the idea of going over to Castine and stealing one of the old cannons, bringing it across the bay and firing it the night before the 4th. On a subsequent evening, 7 men boarded a small sloop called the Yankee Adams and started off for Castine to get the gun. To their dismay, they discovered that the cannon was too heavy to be carried off, and even if they had gotten into the boat, the little sloop probably would have been swamped. They managed only to dump it partway down the embankment, but their determination did not wane. Much like the characters of a future movie called Jaws, they decided they were going to need a bigger boat. So it was that on the night of July 3rd, a big scow from Pierce's shipyard, outfitted with a pair of large wheels and other equipment, and 19 able-bodied young men set out for Castine. The Yankee Adams came along as well with a crew of 7, intending to tow the sloop back across the bay. Unfortunately, the night was foggy, and both ships quickly became lost and separated from each other. After several hours of rowing, the crew of the scow saw a light they believed to be the Dice's headlight at Castine, but which was in fact the Fort Point light as the tide had swept them back up the bay. They managed to work their way back down the bay to Castine, and there, after several hours of labor, they successfully got the cannon down the bank, on the beach, and in the scow. As they still hadn't found the Yankee Adams, they instead roped in a Captain Hodgdon and his ship the Dayspring to tow them back to Belfast, and thus, through a truly communal effort, the gun was landed at Belfast's lower steamboat wharf. For those concerned, the Yankee Adams and her crew also found their way safely back to Belfast, although they were probably quite embarrassed. However, it was then discovered that the gun could not be fired, due to its touch hole being filled with a rat-tail file that the United States troops had put in before abandoning the fort in 1814, presumably as so to stop the British from utilizing the cannons. Unfortunately, this also stopped the Belfastians from utilizing the cannons, and so after failing to remove the file, they instead drilled a new hole with an improvised drill and dragged the cannon to the high bank below the steamboat wharf. After all this hard labor, the goal was at long last achieved. The cannon was fired off many times over the 4th of July, sounding proudly across the bay. It is perhaps unsurprising, considering the fact that it was very clear to everyone in a 10-mile radius that Belfast had a cannon now, that the cannon was then stolen again. Quoting again from the History of Belfast, some residents of Belmont, doubtless inspired by the example of their city neighbors, stole the cannon on Sunday the 13th and carried it to that town. However, within 2 days, the cannon had been discovered under a pile of brush, brought back to Belfast, and kept in the Custom House grounds, where it was guarded for several days. The journey did not end there. The cannon was brought out again on a subsequent 4th of July and brought up to the muster field above Congress Street, where it was again fired off repeatedly in celebration. Though they returned it to the cellar of the Custom House for safekeeping that night, the firing of the cannon had once again attracted thieves, and in the night, the iron door was torn off the entrance to the cellar, and the cannon was brought to the east side of Belfast, where it was dumped off a wharf into the mud flats. It lay there for some time before being dragged up to Tattershall Hill and fired off again, this time to celebrate the election of President Garfield. It then remained on the hill for 10 years, before finally being discovered by a man named Edward Johnson climbing the hill with his family. Edward told the people of Belfast what he had found, and the cannon was dug out and brought back to the other side of the river, where it was greeted with a parade and placed in front of Memorial Hall, its present and, we trust, final resting place. Or at least, so they thought.